Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance in person. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you've submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak, as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the MGA Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes? Yes.
I have some comments and a motion for under unfinished business and business arising. 2.21.
What's it pertaining to, Councillor Kester?
The minutes. And also at 2 o'clock today, I have a specialist appointment. I have to go.
Okay.
And if there's no other additions, I'll adopt the agenda.
I think administration has some additions.
Yes, Reeve Link through the chair. Administration has 3 additions to add to the agenda. The first one being under 2.2.1, review of communication/public engagement survey questions. And then there's 2 council ratification or attendance ratification, one for the Strathmore and Wheatland District Chamber of Commerce event, and one for the City of Calgary Compost and Recycling Facilities Tour. So we suggest adding those under 2.2.2 and 2.2.3. Thank you.
And then I have a couple of additions for council's consideration as well. I received a letter late last night from the Mayor of Arrowwood. You'll recall the joint letter that we sent with Vulcan County, Siksika Nation, and Arrowwood regarding the single-lane bridges. The Mayor of Arrowwood would like us to resubmit a letter to Minister Sawney from Transportation prioritizing one of the bridges. I'll circulate the letter just shortly so people have an opportunity to review that. And it is just requesting attendance at a lunch next Tuesday as well. We have our strategic planning session then, but I thought it may work for 1 or 2 of us just to go and attend the lunch at noon and then rejoin the session. Perhaps we could add that under 2.2. Let's do minutes as 1, communication as 2, SWCC event as 3, City of Calgary Compost as 4. We could do Arrowwood letter as 5 regarding the bridges. And then I also wanted to add attendance at FCM convention. And I also have a Community Futures Conference that I would like to add just for per diems. Community Futures is covering the conference and all other expenses. And then the last one is I was chatting with Arno with Newell County Council, and they were wondering if we were interested in just having a joint meeting to introduce our councils, similarly to what we did with Rocky View and what we have coming up with Chestermere. I let him know that we were in the process of sort of meeting with our neighbors and that we were just sort of doing it gradually with the new council. So if we might want to look at Newell next, so we could add that under 2.28. Any other additions?
Where do I fit in then?
I put yours first, 2.21. Yeah, and then well, is that okay, Brian, or
rest.
I could put minutes after, because you already have these numbered on this sheet.
No, we can do that, and we'll get someone just because there is some additions, quite a few. We'll just get someone to type this up and circulate it back to council.
Oh,
just for
wonderful.
everyone has it.
Thank you so much. Any other additions or changes? Councillor Coaster, you had a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Perfect. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. With the minutes circulated, from our March 1st regular council meeting, any errors or omissions?
Move to accept the minutes as presented.
Councillor Laprise has moved. I did have one question. I'm just finding the line. Sorry. For Resolution CM 2022-03-32, on page 11, I was just wondering if we should strike board member conduct. I don't think that was stated in the motion. Resolution CM-2022-03-32 on page 11. First, well, above the second carried on that page. Does anybody else recall the motion? I believe the motion at the time just stated letter, but I don't think we stated what it was pertaining to. Would it be best practice to defer and we could review?
I'm just looking at this motion now. I don't really think that if we strike that extra line, it wouldn't really make a difference to what's going on. So we could definitely strike it, and the intent is still there.
Okay. That's my motion.
Is there an advantage to striking it?
Well, if it wasn't in the actual motion, then it shouldn't have been included. I just don't know off the top of my head. But either way, administration has started moving forward on it, and it's kind of irrelevant because ideally, there was a letter that was issued. I haven't seen it. I'm going to see it. So to me, it's kind of irrelevant.
I just don't think, when we were discussing it, I don't think we referenced what the letter was regarding. So I would just request that edit to just remove board member conduct. That would be the only, or I guess on board member conduct, those 4 words. Other than that, no concerns.
Yeah, I would agree because we had no idea it was in the letter. So
I think there may have been like some assumptions that that may have been what it was regarding, but I don't think we knew that, so I don't think it was in the motion. Would you accept an amendment to your motion, Councillor Laprise?
I believe it's
bigger.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Bigger. Okay, perfect, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
That was the motion to change. Do we still need a motion to approve? It's amended?
Oh, I assumed it was a motion to approve as amended. Were you just moving an amendment?
That's your friendly. Sorry?
Sorry, Donna, you were just moving an amendment?
It was my original motion on the amendment, so I'm okay
Oh.
with the amendment.
Oh,
But
Okay.
it's her
with the
motion for
minutes.
the minutes.
Oh, perfect, okay.
I see. So I will approve minutes as amended.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I thought you had moved, but then, perfect, okay.
Yeah.
Nope, that's good. So we approved a motion to amend the minutes to remove those 4 words. And now Councillor Laprise has a motion on the floor to approve the minutes as amended by the previous motion. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We will move to 2.11. I'll move that the process for the Wheatland County Council meeting as it pertains to the scheduled public hearings be as follows. Public hearing, first reading if required, then consideration for further readings of the bylaw for those public hearings that have been closed. I further move that the above process will take place with the absence of resolutions to go into and out of council before and after each public hearing. All in favor? Motion is carried. I'll call the public hearing for bylaw 2021-31 to order. Welcome, everybody. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? Can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the Municipal Government Act?
Yes.
Thank you. And were there any written submissions following the deadline for the package preparation, but prior to the deadline for submissions?
One submission was received following the deadline for circulation.
The deadline. So we did have sort of a standing procedure where we would read into the record written submissions that were, if they were received after the package was put together, but prior to submission deadline. This submission was following the submission deadline. Would council like the submission read into the public record? I see one yes. I think we can do it by consensus if no one objects. And then we'll just keep this as a standing procedure so we're consistent. If you could read it into the public record, please. Thank you.
The submission was made by Albert Guy Ballum Knapp, who is an adjacent landowner. Dear Mr. Felt, I am writing today to express my opposition to the proposed redesignation of a portion of land from agricultural to country residential in order to accommodate a proposed 1.21 hectare or 3-acre subdivision. As the landowner that has lived here for the past 30 years, that borders 2 sides of that proposed subdivision to the north and east, I strongly oppose another subdivision on that parcel. This would be the 3rd subdivision of that original 4.6 hectare, 11.4 acre parcel. Not only would that increase traffic, but it would add to the congestion of that area. There is also a natural spring that runs along the east-west fence line along my driveway that feeds into a pond and low area that I am very concerned about construction disrupting or destroying. I hope you will take into consideration my concerns and reject this application. Please feel free to reach me for any questions. Thank you, Albert Ballum Knapp.
Thank you, and please proceed with your presentation.
My name is Taylor Felt, and I am with the Planning and Development Services team here to present bylaw 2021-31 for Council's consideration of 2nd and 3rd reading. The bylaw is proposed to redesignate a 3-acre portion within the Northwest 2924-24 west of the 4th from Agricultural General District to Country Residential District. The parcel is located approximately 2.5 kilometers northeast of the town of Strathmore along Range Road 245. The proposal is being made to facilitate a future subdivision application. The proposed Lot 1, just flip here, is undeveloped and currently not serviced. The applicant has provided technical studies and reports that indicate the lot can be serviced, which would be considered at subdivision. Lot 2 is developed with a dwelling, acreage, several accessory buildings, and associated servicing infrastructure located on site. Lot 2 will remain designated agricultural general. Generally, the proposal aligns with the provincial policies and county plans, and therefore administration supports second and third reading of bylaw 2021-31. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? If you can just come to the microphone and state your name, please, sir.
My name's Vincent Orm. We live on the property in question. The 3-acre parcel that we're looking to redesignate to country residential, there's no intent to get into the low-lying area that is the spring that was brought up in question on the letter. And the proposed subdivision is to create a lot that possibly our kids would have a place to build a home due to the rising costs of everything. And we have put in the money, done the studies, so the lot could be serviced. And I know the neighbor, the adjacent landowner, there's a large shelter belt blocking the view from that lot. So we don't really foresee too much of a problem there at all with any kind of development. And we're not planning on, we do not want to develop that any more than a single residence. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question, sir. Councillor Kester?
Yeah, I'm looking at the satellite view of a property there. And I see your property there. And I'm thinking you have an adequate building site on the proposed property. You can maintain setbacks from the stream, from a spring I hear on there. Just as long as 1-acre building site, I'm thinking, is what you really need, and that's on there.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Sorry, what
Yeah,
do you
that's
mean
all.
by 1-acre building site? I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Well, so if you have 1 acre on your subdivision where you can actually build on, whether it's meets setbacks from the road, meets setbacks from hills, meets setbacks from everything that you need to set back on your property, right?
Because we've checked into all of that,
Yeah.
and they couldn't even build in the back 2 acres. That's close to the other home, is what I'm saying. The only place they could build, basically, because we checked it, because we want to rebuild eventually as well, our home, like redesign it or renovate it, but they could only build closest to the road anyway, which is quite far from the other people's.
Yeah, and that gives you an acre still.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be the front acre closest to the road where people could build because of the setbacks and so on.
It leaves about an 1.5 to 2 acre buffer between the building site and the adjacent landowner.
And ma'am, if I can just,
wanted it on record so you knew
Yes,
you had
that's
it.
what I
So,
was, yeah.
there you
ma'am, if I can just get you to introduce yourself as well
Hi,
for our
sorry.
records. No, that's okay.
I'm Cindy
Thank you.
Jensen. I'm the co-owner of the land.
Thank you so much.
go. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for the applicant?
As far as the traffic increase, it would be one singular home, one residential home. And as far as I understand, that road is to be paved. It's been on the lot to pave it for the last 4 years. So I think even by paving it, it's going to increase traffic period as far as Nightingale goes. And do you know what I mean? It's going to be a paved access up to the 564, right? So I think that's going to increase for all of us no matter what, no matter how you look at it. But where would the driveway, the same thing, right? What do they call the driveway? What's the technical? Approach would be the same thing, right off of the gravel where ours is as well.
And if it's for family, they're probably there coming.
That's the plan.
Yeah, they're coming
have-
anyway.
Yeah, we have 6 children, so between us, he has 3, I have 3, so who knows which one.
Yeah, I understand.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any persons who would like to speak in support of the application? Anyone who would like to speak with concerns or in opposition to the application? Does administration have any final comments?
Not at this time.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing for bylaw 2021-31. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council move second reading of bylaw 2021-31, this being a bylaw for the purpose of amending land use bylaw 2016-01 to redesignate plus or minus 1.21 hectares, plus or minus 3 acres of Lot 2 Plan 9210498 within Northwest 2924 west of the 4th, from agricultural general to county residential district as shown in the attached Schedule A, forming part of this bylaw.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Questions or discussion? Yes.
I just have one question for administration. In the one letter, he mentions a spring and whatever else it was. Are we required by any law to ensure that that doesn't get disturbed that you know of?
Through the Reeve, this is something that would be reviewed at the subdivision stage, and through the circulation process, it may be required that a study is provided that addresses the spring specifically in the wetland.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move third reading.
Councillor Eichert has moved third reading. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll now open the public hearing for bylaw 2021-34. I'll call the public hearing to order. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for this public hearing? And can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
Yes.
Thank you. And are there any written submissions that were not included in the package?
Yes, Madam Reeve, there was one submission that was received after the circulation period closed.
If we could have that read into the record, please. Thank you.
This submission is from Debbie Key. The letter states, comments regarding proposed amendments, backyard hens and backyard coops. Supportive of having backyard hens, and I feel it can bring value to a family as long as the animal welfare is considered. Would like to see an educational program available that is mandatory before licensing could be approved. Backyard beekeeping hives and supers. Oppose any number of boxes in residential hamlet/areas. The potential liability for safety and health to adjacent residents is needless risk. The growing number of severe allergic reaction and being subject to anaphylaxis shock is too threatening. Beekeeping should be kept in an agriculture, rural farm, or acreage space, eliminating risks to close neighbors. While intentions may be good due to the vital importance for the preservation of our ecological balance and food production, this I believe would be creating problems before they happen. There are plenty of land/farms and acreages in our community that welcome these beekeeper operations on their land. Thank you. Sincerely, Debbie Key.
Thank you very much. Please proceed with your presentation.
Taylor Felt here, again presenting bylaw 2021-34 for council's consideration of second and third reading. The bylaw is proposed to implement textual changes, introduce new uses and consolidate others, modernize the language used and provide clarity to existing regulations and application requirements within the land use bylaw 2016-01. The areas under consideration include wineries and alcohol production, parks and playgrounds, backyard hens and coops, backyard beehives and beehive supers, manufactured dwellings, landscaping, fencing, and screening, and rear yard setbacks for accessory buildings and structures, specifically within the Lakes of Muirfield community. I'll provide a brief overview of the changes proposed in each area. Administration is proposing a new use, alcohol production, which will encompass the existing wineries' use and create greater economic opportunities to allow for breweries, meaderies, and the production of spirits. Administration has proposed refining the existing parks and playground use definition to parks minor and parks major, which will help classify parks based on their scale, intensity, and the impact they have on their receiving environment or community. Improvements to the landscaping, fencing, and screening section of the land use bylaw will direct applicants to the county's landscaping and screening guidelines as a support document when preparing a landscape plan. Other changes eliminate redundancies and provide greater clarity to the landscaping plan requirements. Reducing the rear yard setback for accessory buildings in the Lakes of Muirfield district will align with the current architectural controls within that district, improving clarity of expectations for the applicant. Administration is proposing updating definitions and regulations to provide a distinction between manufactured dwellings, that being manufactured dwelling 1 and manufactured dwelling 2, development permit applications for older, previously owned or renovated mobile homes that do not meet the CSA A277 certification will now be considered as a discretionary use under the new manufactured 2 dwelling definition in several districts throughout the county. The application requirements for this include a pre-inspection application report prepared by a registered engineer or a safety codes officer that identifies the structural integrity and suitability of the dwelling to be relocated in the county. And lastly, backyard hens, coops, and backyard beehives are new uses proposed within the Hamlet Residential General District. On October 5th, an information sheet and survey was mailed to residents in the county's 12 traditional hamlet residential areas, as well as the communities of Speargrass and the Lakes of Muirfield. The survey was available until November 8th, where overall administration heard that a majority of participants were not interested in keeping backyard hens and bees on their property, but were not opposed to their neighbors doing so, provided conditions were in place to consider the potential impact to neighbors and the welfare of the animal. The results of the survey can be found in the attached engagement package starting on page 49. Administration then circulated proposed amendments to residents living in the county's hamlet and residential land use districts in mid-December 2021 and January 2022. The majority of responses received from the residents were from residents living in Speargrass and the Lakes of Muirfield, who are in opposition to permitting hens, coops, and beehives in their communities. The circulation, in response to this feedback, backyard hens and beekeeping are no longer being considered in those two communities. The circulation notice and responses are included in the engagement package starting on page 69. Comments were also received by administration on the proposed amendments once the public hearing notice was circulated, following first reading of the bylaw on February 15th, and are also included in the engagement package. The bylaw proposes that hens and their coops be added to the Hamlet Residential General District, which regulates development in the county's 12 traditional hamlet areas as a discretionary use. This means that an application for a development permit received by the county would be circulated to adjacent landowners for review and comment, and then presented to the MPC for consideration. The application would need to prove that it meets the minimum standards outlined in the land use bylaw, found on page 31 of the agenda package, which have been crafted in such a way as to consider neighboring properties, mitigate nuisances, and the overall health and welfare of the hen. Those interested in keeping bees within the HRG district will not be required to submit a development permit, provided no more than one hive is proposed and the entrance of the hive is directed away from neighboring properties. Hens and beekeepers will still be required under the provincial regulations to register their flock and hive and obtain a PID number, which is used for tracking purposes. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for administration? Is there anybody who would like to speak in support of the application? Is there anybody who would like to speak with concerns or in opposition to the application? Just call one more time, just due to the hybrid nature of the meeting. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak in support or with concerns to the application? And does administration have any final comments?
Not at this time.
Councillor Kester, did you have a question?
Redland. It's on page 22. And it prohibits the keeping of farm animals or livestock. Redland, as far as I can remember back, has had horses. Gone now, but he raced in the Calgary Stampede. Those animals were well looked after. Paid county road ditches to put up feed, but that's in the past. And property across the way has, I think, about 2 acres, he said. Always had horses there. As long as I remember, I don't know how I let it slip through the first time. But I don't know, is there some, on that one property that has the 2 acres, it is ample room for horses. Is there some way, if somebody come in and they wanted to put horses on that land, they could apply for it through this bylaw?
Councillor Kester, I'm just going to ask you to bring this back perhaps as an agenda item just so that we can focus our questions on the public hearing for the application that's before us. Looking to administration, I think, would that be best practice? Just recognizing we're still in the public hearing for the bylaw that's before us.
So I would recommend, if we want to look at a specific land use within the bylaw and how use of land kind of is extrapolated from the bylaw, we can certainly bring back that specific area if we're looking at Redland for an agenda item, certainly. There is a link, that we can look at with respect to looking at this particular bylaw and the use of horses, but we are certainly looking at bees and hens. That's what we're looking at, and there are upper level government regulations that kind of separate that fact from an equine, so to speak. And we do have within the land use bylaw, I'll look to the senior planner, but the definition is, I think, livestock, is it? Yes, thank you. So we can look at livestock in various areas for Councillor Kester, should you want us to bring back a report for council.
And then we would have to amend bylaw again if we choose to proceed down that road.
Should council's decision be to look at amending the land use bylaw, we can certainly take that process after bringing back information.
Okay, because after thinking about it, I wanted it included in this public hearing that
Yeah, and
it's listed there, that maybe. Okay, I'm fine with that.
And a member of the public, if you can just come to the podium and state your name.
Sorry, this just interests me quite a bit.
If you can just state your name one more time.
Sorry,
I apologize.
Cindy
No, that's okay.
Jensen.
Thank you.
And is this for including in the town of Strathmore?
No, so the town of Strathmore is a separate municipality with their own mayor and council.
So it would be in Wheatland. So say if my neighbor decided to get bees, then there would be no problem, right? Is what you're saying with this? I have a brother who lives with me who's severely disabled, not physically, but mentally. He's anaphylactic, allergic to bee stings. He would die within a minute. I'm just curious if any of that is kind of
Yeah, that's been expressed in some of the feedback from some of the correspondence we've received that we are considering during this public hearing for sure.
Okay. So say if the neighbor did, would there be anything that I could do about that is I guess my question.
I'll let administration speak to that just due to how we have integrated it into the proposed amendments to the bylaw.
Okay.
I'll just let administration take the microphone. Thank you. And thank you for your question.
Through the Reeve, in response to the question, so what's before us today is just one beehive box in the Hamlet Residential General District. So this doesn't apply to country residential zone parcels or agricultural zone parcels. On agricultural zone parcels, somebody could make a development permit application for an apiary at a larger scale, more commercial level.
Thank you.
Just a question for procedure. If I wanted to raise some issues, would I do that at this point or during second reading?
We'll save debate for once the public hearing is closed. So public hearing, we will focus just on questions regarding administration's presentation or if there was any member of the public that spoke. If council had a question just to clarify a comment that was made or that type of thing. But we'll reserve debate for once the public hearing is closed.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding administration's presentation or to clarify? Councillor LaPriest?
Sorry, I did have one question, and that has to do with, so it says Speargrass, Lakes of Muirfield, and Eagle Lake were taken out, I think. But we didn't have any comments from Eagle Lake, did we? What was the reason for taking them out?
Through the Reeve, the decision to actually include Eagle Lake in the, I guess, grouping with Speargrass and Lakes of Muirfield was based on the potential build out of that area. It does see more urban style development in the future. At the time of build out, this was more of a, if this is approved, there's similarities between those other urban communities as well that could apply.
Thank you. Councillor Kester?
Just for clarification, if somebody wanted bees and their land is designated agricultural general, it's a permitted use?
I will double check here for you. I believe in the agricultural general district, it is a permitted use.
And country residential, permitted or... Oh, she left. I was just clarifying her question. Country residential, is it permitted or discretionary?
I can, through the Reeve, I can check for you right now and let you know. Just 2 moments.
I wonder if because the keeping of bees is an agricultural practice, if it would just be like under an agricultural, like as part of agricultural operations.
Yes, Madam Reeve, that's correct. It falls under the definition of agricultural operation.
Perfect. And so then Councillor Kester had a clarifying question around country residential.
Through the Reeve, it falls under the same category. It would not be precluded from being on a country residential parcel. It is possible, yes.
Perfect.
She left.
Good questions. Any other clarifying questions? Does administration have any final comments?
Not at this time.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing for bylaw 2021-34. Council's wishes.
Is now the time we can debate?
Yes, we could either put a motion on the floor and then debate, or at times we have had practice where we debate before putting a motion on the floor to sort of help us determine what motion we want to contemplate. I think best practice is if we do put a motion on the floor and then we can actually debate that motion.
Just trying to find the motion.
Page 21.
Oh, there we go. I move that council undertakes the public, that's not it. That council move second reading of bylaw 2021-34 for B, bylaw for the purpose of amending bylaw, land use bylaw number 2016-01 as shown on the attached Schedule A.
Questions or discussion? Councillor Larison.
I will just raise again, in my professional opinion and that of veterinarians, that, and I'm going to read it. Chickens commonly carry bacteria such as Salmonella and Campylobacter, which can cause intestinal disease in humans. Those most at risk of contracting disease from chickens are children under 5, the elderly, pregnant women, and people with compromised immune systems. Humans are exposed to the bacteria through chicken feces. For example, when they handle the animals without thoroughly washing their hands immediately afterwards, allow chickens inside their home, or come into contact with runoff containing feces. So I'm just putting it out there that there's a risk to this. I need to say that as a professional. You guys can vote how you want.
Councillor Kester.
I'm looking at the chart. I don't have it on my screen anymore. Anyway, I have to reset it. There was more people opposed to adding chickens and bees than there was in favor. And I'm always been of the idea that if people want something, they ask for it, we change it. There's not enough people asking for it, in my opinion, to change it for the people that don't want it. I can't support this bylaw as it is. I think I have to remove the bees, and we have ample opportunity in country residential, country agricultural. We've made them smaller. We've made it easy for the acreages. But that's what I'm saying. There's not enough people want it.
Councillor Laprise.
So I agree with Councillor Kester. In the survey, the majority indicated they do not have an interest in both hens and beekeeping. I'm also a little bit, maybe offended is too strong a word, but that the concerns raised for Speargrass, Muirfield, and Eagle Lake don't also apply to all the other hamlets. I mean, if there's a concern about attracting coyotes or like the noise and nuisance and unsightly properties. I know in Cluny they already have issues with unsightly properties, and we're struggling to improve that. So I am concerned that this could result in more issues in our hamlets. I think there were lots of issues raised in the letters, like for how do we repeal permission once it's granted. I think also the issue about allergies is a real one. I don't know how we're mitigating that, really. I mean, directing the entryway away from neighboring properties, I'm not sure that's effective, really. And then my last one was one of the letters brought something similar to Councillor Larson's comment about oftentimes it's backyard hens that bring disease to commercial properties, and so that would be, that would be not responsible of us, I think, to not consider that. So yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Don't disagree with anything said, and I'll add a little bit more to that too. Yeah, we don't have a lot of asks for this right at the moment, and I'm speaking specifically to the bees, mostly the hens, but the bees on there as well. They do add a level of rodent attraction to your place. I can speak that firsthand. I have mouse traps. It's incredible the amount that show up when you have feed around. The waste management is a lot larger than people realize, what comes out of there and where it would go. It would probably go into landfill because that'd be the only option available for a lot of these places. There is another point here with the bylaw, kind of speaking what Councillor Kester said. An engagement survey, it says the current county land use bylaw prohibits the keeping of farm animals and livestock, and it lists off our hamlets. I do know Nightingale. I could probably count. There was probably 150 sheep there, and there was probably 30 horses there, and they've been there for a long time. There's been no issue whatsoever. People look after it. So we'll have to tweak this at some point in the future. We'll have to talk about that. Because they do, I think we should look at something maybe on acreage size, because some of those parcels are 10 acres within a hamlet. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah,
have
maybe it
those
has to
issues
do
as
with
well. So we got to kind of define this. And the last thing is, who's going to oversee a problem with this? We've dealt with this in council before, where we've had livestock that's been grossly neglected, and we have little to zero power, from what I understand. And SPCA is hard to deal with at sometimes. And I don't expect our bylaw officers to be chicken officers or bee officers. I think it's a can of worms that I'd sooner put back on a shelf sealed with those two things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
First of all, I want to thank administration for this. I think you've covered everything. I'm sort of in shock. I can keep a chicken in Calgary now, but I can't keep a chicken out in the country, out in our hamlets. I don't think if we don't do this, I don't think how we can stop this from happening, because if they allow chickens in Calgary, I can theoretically raise chickens in Mount Royal. And we're not going to allow somebody to raise chickens. We cannot take the worst practice of everybody out there and just say they might treat their chickens horribly, there might be disease and all that kind of stuff. I believe people have a right. If you can raise a chicken in Calgary, you should be able to raise a chicken in Cheadle. And you guys want to make say that this is going to be, there are risks in everything. This is not your government's, I don't even think this is government's position to be here. If you raise, it's like the chickens, or sorry, it's like the sheep and cattle or horses in Nightingale. Nobody complains. We don't have a problem. So all we're trying to do is figure out a way to do this properly. And I believe what you guys are doing is the right way. So yeah, no, I'm going to vote for this. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We'll go to Councillor Bigger, then Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Yeah, this was brought forward to me, so I know that the want is there. And it's been there through sale of, it's a question that whether people will be allowed to bring them to the hamlets. So it's there, and to deal with it is like Tom said, complaint-based, of course, but if you have a dog, we allow dogs. If they have a barking dog, there's a complaint, then you deal with the complaint. It's the same procedure would be through here. Like, I don't see how we're limiting now to 5 or 6 hens, where this is going to be a big problem. It's a small bee box. We are an agriculture county, and I can't see a problem with putting this through. So I'll be voting for it, of course.
Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Just respond to Councillor Eckert and Councillor Bigger. So I understand Calgary's going through this. I would venture to guess within a couple years' time it will be modified. Just a guess. But I would rather not be first out the gate with something like this. Within the county of Wheatland, we do offer agriculture. Agriculture is a big part of our our county. We have many acreages that you can do all this on. So where we concentrate population, is this, as the county as a whole, is it something we really need to do? Whereas City of Calgary doesn't have those options. The bigger urban centers don't have the footprint allowed for that, so I can see the pressures being on them. But here, if you want to go out and buy 5 acres, 10 acres, 3 acres and do this, you're allowed to. So we'll debate.
Councillor Bigger?
So I think that a lot of the response was that they had no problem with it, but they would not have any interest in it. That's okay, but the people that are interested in it, why is that not available to them? And you have to think of it that way too. If somebody wants to have 5 hens and in their backyard and be a part of the rural community through that, I do not see a problem with this. People are not going to say, yeah, you're looking at numbers because that's how we're given, but people will absolutely say more to oppose than they will to say, especially if they're not interested in actually having it. But that option should be there for them. And I think, why are we denying that option through a bylaw? Why are we telling them we can't?
Councillor Larson?
I'll just put out another thing for thought. You can't answer this question, okay? Let's just say we have some chickens and they start, and I'll be very polite about this, eating the back ends out of the other chickens. Anybody here know what the 3 possible causes for that deficiency are? And would it be reasonable to expect someone that lives in a hamlet to know that?
Councillor Bigger?
If something is wrong with whatever animal I choose to keep on my land, I definitely will find out what is going on, right? That's their option to find that out. And there's resources everywhere to find out what deficiency would be causing them. That's with anything. If something's wrong with your cattle, something maybe you don't know exactly, you would find out too.
And that's what farmers do. That's kind of the point I was making, is chickens are an agricultural animal, and I think the average person doesn't have the ability to take care of them. I don't know, maybe I've never heard anybody taking a chicken to the vet, but maybe you can. Well, I know what we did with them.
I have a couple of comments. On page 53, we show that 42% of respondents were interested in keeping bees. That's actually a fairly substantial portion of the respondents to the online survey. And like Councillor Bigger, I've had individuals throughout the county, not just within my division, but throughout the county within hamlets, express an interest in both keeping hens and bees. And I would agree with Councillor Eichert's comments just around the rationale for restricting this. There is unequivocally risk with it, and I recognize that completely, Councillor Larson. And I think that's why the way that administration has structured this is so critical, particularly given the hens, because through that development permit application, with having it be a permitted use, there can be assurances that people are receiving that educational information prior to submitting their development application. And when the DP comes to MPC, we can, we have a mechanism to ensure that that was provided. Obviously, you can't ensure that people necessarily uptake it or act on it, but we can ensure that we have done our due diligence in providing it. I think administration has done an incredibly good job of drawing on best practices of the multiple municipalities in this region in Alberta that already permit hens and bees. And we have the advantage of looking at this after those bylaws have been put in place. And so we've been able to draw on those best practices in terms of provisions for, safe and healthy shelter for the hens and that type of thing. For me, the highest risk element is that disease, but I think that's what you mitigate through education. And there was some comments that this is being done already. I hate for us to have citizens or residents who would like to be law-abiding, be forced to do something and be not be forced, choose to do something and not be in compliance. If something like food sustainability is really important to them, or they want their children to experience the responsibility of keeping hens or bees. We have friends whose children are very actively involved in keeping their bees as well, and also multiple friends in other municipalities who do keep hens in a more urban setting, and it's definitely an integral part of their children's education and upbringing and sort of learning of responsibility and that type of thing, and I think those are critical. I would agree with Councillor Eichert regarding the fact that we are a rural municipality, and as so, I think it's really important that residents, even outside of our agricultural areas, have the opportunity for kids to learn where their food comes from and to learn those responsibilities and work ethic that can come from keeping hens. With response to the questions around where these sort of activities should be focused, that is one of my strongest rationales for permitting this within our hamlets, and I think it can actually contribute to the mitigation of fragmentation of ag land, because I would hate to see agricultural land be utilized by somebody keeping a single beehive or 6 chickens. I don't think that's a good use of agricultural land, or to move to an acreage simply for that purpose. If we can focus that much more sort of residential development into our hamlets, that is something that we have identified as a priority, because it is a way to mitigate that ag fragmentation that we are seeing. I don't think I got here. On page 64, it also showed that a full 32% of respondents were actually interested in keeping bees themselves. So we had 42% potentially interested in keeping hens, 32% interested in keeping bees. And recognizing that that wasn't a large number, I think it was 30, I should have written it down, 30 of one and 34 people interested in keeping hens, and it was maybe slightly less for the bees. But even though those aren't a significant number of people that responded to the survey, it is a significant proportion. And as well, there was majority for each of those questions who did not object to the keeping of bees or hens on their property as well. I also recognize the gravity of the risk of an anaphylactic reaction, but I think we do have to recognize that bees exist in our hamlets just naturally. And speaking to a good friend who he has instructed apiary classes and has been a beekeeper in urban areas for several years, a well-maintained hive should not cause increased risk for stings in adjacent properties. And I think, again, that's where our education program could come into play, recognizing that the bees would be permitted, so we wouldn't have a mechanism to ensure that. What my preference would be is, if there was council support for this, that we do a focused educational campaign through the County Connector, through our social media channels, through our website, because the County Connector should reach all residents, recognizing not everybody takes the time to read that, but we would be doing our due diligence that way. And as well, the provincial registration, I know when we actually did a course and we're looking into beekeeping, I recognized I did not have the time to commit to that at this point in my life, but it was very educational, and I believe the province has some requirements as well when you register. So there's also that mechanism there for both the hens and the bees, if I understand correctly as well. I will be supporting the motion. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Kester.
The bees kind of look after themselves. I know when there's a bee hive around, there's increased activity of bees. It's a given. I've been in yards where there are beehives and they have bees all over. Never been stung. They'll do land honey. The chickens, I have a big concern. I used to raise chickens. It's a farm animal. You have to call chickens. If you don't, they get old fast. I don't see anything when a chicken gets old and you put a new chicken in with them. Not good. the fact of animals. I don't see any of that in there. How are we going to dispose of these chickens when they get 3 years old? That's my experience, old. But I'll still back into hardly anybody asked for it in the surveys. So 30% of the ones that's answered asked for it. Still not a majority. Not even close. So I'll rely on the respondents. Nobody's asking for it, or not enough in my name. I know the people that want them will probably look after them. We had a report from, we have no chicks and you can't go to, where do you buy them? At UFA and the other one, PB Mart. Oh, they're cute as can be when they got them sitting on the desk there. But we got in the bylaw you can't buy chicks. Why? Because they talk to the SPC that buy the chicks, they grow up, they don't want the chickens. So they have to do something with the chickens. So I don't know where you're going to buy 6 chickens if you can't buy the chicks. But the rationale is the SPC, what I'm trying to get across, it's hard for them to find a home for chickens. Nobody wants them. I'll go back to the original. Nobody hardly enough is asking. I don't see a ground swelling of people wanting chickens in residential. I'll vote against it.
Councillor Larson?
I just have a question for administration because you guys have done a lot of work on this thing, and it looks like to me that the contentious parts of this bylaw are the two that say backyard hens and backyard coops and backyard hives and supers. Could we approve the other amendments and just take those two out because it's so controversial? Like, is that allowable? Like, could I make a motion for that, for example? Because I'd hate to see us lose the whole thing, even though there's division on those two contentious areas. So, just a question.
Through at council's discretion, you can make that amendment.
And Councillor Larson, Madam Reeve, to council, just to be specific, should council be, amenable for the rest of them, state specifically what you're striking from? Correct. So the 2 items that I'm hearing, if that's the case, but that's best practice.
Okay. Can you flip me what I should say?
We do have a motion currently on the floor that we'll just finish first, but we can go there as well, and we can take a break if we need to clarify.
Point of order. If we have a motion on the floor, it can be amended.
Yes, it
And I
can.
think Councillor Larson's talking about amendment to the motion. So it can be amended. And then it would take precedence over the motion.
Yes. That's potential. Deputy Reeve
Take a
Clausen?
2-minute break then?
We'll continue debate on the current motion if we can. Deputy Reeve Clausen?
So I'll just kind of closing statements for me would be, what I previously said, and also looking into my division, the biggest hamlet within Wheatland County, which is Lakes and Muirfield, doesn't want it. They have no desire to have it. From what I understand, Speargrass does not want it. They're more executive kind of areas. I do have a hamlet of Nightingale that I do know there's livestock there now, so that I've mentioned that. So I just can't support it right now. I would like to see something without the chickens for sure, possibly bees.
Deputy Reeve Clausen, I'm just finding where it is. But you recognize that it would not be permitted in Muirfield, that was an exception.
The residents of Muirfield do not want.
But the current motion on the floor, they're excluded, as is Speargrass.
But I'm thinking I'd like to see it everywhere.
You'd like to not see it everywhere.
That's right.
You would like to not see one?
Not see hens anywhere within any hamlet and or bees.
And so that was actually part of the next point I was going to make. So just the comments around the majority of people are opposed. We did have a significant number of letters expressing concerns, but when I reviewed them, it did appear that the vast majority of those were either from Speargrass or Muirfield. So when I look at the proposed amendments that we're contemplating, the amendments exclude those communities from bees and hens. They would not be permitted in Muirfield or Speargrass or the Eagle Lake community on that side, which I think is very consistent with what Deputy Reeve Clausen had said, and I think that that really mitigates those concerns that are expressed, the vast majority of concerns that we received that were from those communities. When we look at overall in the county, there was 59% of people on page 54 from the online survey that were not opposed to their neighbor keeping hens. And on page 65, we see 62%, also a clear majority, that were not opposed to their neighbors keeping bees. And so I just want to clarify some of the comments that were made, and just in relation to the survey results that were provided by administration. And I really did appreciate that administration brought forward proposed amendments that did exclude those communities. And I think that also provides choice within Wheatland County, where if you have residents who want sort of that character of a community, we're offering 3 places in Wheatland County where they can live. And then we're also offering the choice where if you wanted to have a more self-sustaining lifestyle, or you wanted to provide educational opportunities for your family, or a food source for your family, or those types of things, we have hamlets. In my hamlet, for example, we have acreages that are 2 acres or around that size that could easily accommodate a small chicken coop, and people who would take the initiative to educate themselves, not myself. We have allergies, unfortunately, that preclude. Just so you know, this is not a self-interest, but I do have neighbors who have expressed an interest, and I know would be very responsible in their care and attention to hens and bees. And I have heard that in other hamlets throughout Wheatland County where there is an interest. And some of this interest is also coming from how it can contribute to ecology and actually contribute to education by supporting bee populations. Hens wouldn't necessarily have that same benefit, but they have other benefits that I think are very important for families. And so I appreciate how it's set up, in that we would have communities within Wheatland that would permit this type of use, recognizing that it would be discretionary with hens. Question to administration again, or as well around that, and we may have touched on this the last time, or at first reading. Could you do a development permit, like with a time limit, like a 2-year development permit for the hens, where you could then review if there were concerns, and that would be a way to mitigate some of, if there was odor or that type of thing, particularly as we introduce this, or if council supported introducing it?
Through the chair, yes, we could include that. I don't believe the bylaw currently has that provision in there, but if we included it in the regulations as saying, the maximum term for a development permit is however many years, that would need to be an amendment to be made, but it certainly can be done.
What would the cost be of that to the applicant?
Through the chair, I believe as it is, they would have to reapply, and it would be the cost again. That could be something to consider when you look at the master rates bylaw. An option if you're doing like a renewal of a bylaw, it can be reduced, or a development permit, it can be a reduced rate, but I don't believe we have that currently.
It's a really good point. I actually wouldn't mind looking at that.
I am right now as a resident, looking at putting backyard chickens in, like, how much is that going to, is there a registration fee, so to speak, to do this?
Through the Reeve, we haven't created a separate fee for a development permit for hens at this point.
Stefan, are you checking the development permit fee?
Through the chair, yes, we're having a look for a similar example here. Just bear with me.
And then one more question to administration regarding the rationale for making bees permitted. I see the rationale for making the hens permitted. Would there be merit in contemplating making the bees permitted? That could mitigate, say, if there were issues with it, that could be brought to the attention for the renewal. If we did, even if we even what I'm contemplating is just doing this, say, for this first time, we could amend it so that you could do more than a 2-year permit or a 1-year permit or that type of thing. But just thinking, because this would be new, and then it would give us a way to gauge what are the challenges within the communities. Does it create any issues? Are there ways to mitigate those issues that have been raised? Something like that.
Through the chair, just to answer Councillor Eichert's question there. So looking at the development permit fees for residential and farm, it varies between $75 for a deck up to $300 for a dwelling. So somewhere in there, something accessory farm building and / structure, that's $150. So that might be an appropriate kind of ballpark. But obviously that would have to be determined through update to the master rates.
We're going to charge somebody $150 for 6 chickens. Let's prorate that on a 2-year to $75 a year. A chicken is one expensive bird. I understand. I understand the reticence because things could go sideways, but that's not our. I think administration's done a good job. What they've done is laid out really good guidelines. People, we'll take my community. We'll take Cheadle. There's no one in Cheadle that has a piece of property that's less than an acre. That's a fair chunk of land. To have 6 chickens on an acre, I mean, it would probably, it's, sure we could say things could go sideways and everything, but that's not our job. Our job is to allow people to do stuff. It's not to put. So if we're looking at something, I say revisit this bylaw in 2 years and see if there's the complaints and all that kind of stuff. But putting a financial burden on our ratepayers who are already paying a substantial burden, I just don't see the. It's cheaper to go get with therapeutic chickens. It's like I can probably get 4 or 5 therapy chickens for less money than what we're going to propose to do here. So I'm not, and are they any, like a chicken is a chicken. So I don't know. I am against anything that's going to add more, charging our ratepayers more money. They pay enough already.
Councillor Kester.
So are you proposing if they have an accessory dwelling on their property that they don't have to pay a fee? Like everybody in the county, when they want to put an accessory building in Merrifield they pay a fee when it comes here.
I'm strictly talking about the chickens.
If I want to grow an accessory building for chickens, I have to come get a development permit. So anybody in the county, that's how everybody's treated. So I don't think this should be treated any differently. You want 6 chickens, you have to put up a building. It says in the bylaw, you have to apply for a development permit for that building. There's a fee for it. It's the way it works. I will not consider different parts of the county not having to get a development fee for whatever accessory they're doing. It's through the whole county.
2 questions to administration. Currently in hamlets, if I understand correctly, residents do not need a development permit for a structure the size of a chicken coop because it would be under 10 meters square, or up to 10 meters squared. You do not require a development permit. Is that right?
Yes, anything less than 100 square feet does not require a development permit, provided it meets the setbacks from the property lines.
Right. So we're actually, to Councillor Kester's point, this would actually require more of a fee than you would say if it was a storage shed or that type of thing. I think the rationale for that was to mitigate some of, to require the development permit to mitigate some of the potential disease elements and that type of thing. And then second question to administration, on agricultural land, if I understand correctly, an agricultural producer would not require a development permit for accessory buildings on agriculture. Is that correct?
Agricultural producers would also be required to pay for a development permit over anything over 100 square feet for an accessory building.
For accessory buildings? Okay. Councillor Kester.
We're talking about 6 chickens and 10 square feet. I think that would be cruelty.
10 square meters. It's in the bylaw.
Feet.
No, 10 square meters up to 107 square feet. It's around 100 and it's 107.64 square feet. It's on page 29.
Okay.
Councillor Bigger, did you have your hand? Did you have your hand?
I just commenting, I think that what Councillor Eichert was talking about was renewing it every 2 years and paying it again for the permit. And I think that would be, but coming to the point that I didn't know it was going to be $150, you can't tell me that if someone's paying $150, they must really, really feel that this is important. And we have to, as leaders, stop telling people what they can do and can't do on things that don't affect us. And I don't feel that them having 6 hens is going to affect us. That's my point.
Councillor LaPrice.
So I feel a little bit more amenable to voting for this with the 100, like possibly a term on the development permit. I think it shows a commitment that you really want to do it. And I think it gives us the opportunity to pull it if there's a problem. I mean, I just don't know that we can monitor it to the level that it needs to be looked at, and that if neighbors are complaining, we have neighbors complaining all the time about their neighbors, and it doesn't always get resolved. So I just feel like there needs to be a way that we can kind of control it. I know that would be offensive to Tom that we control anything, but or others. But I do think our job is to protect the residents of our hamlets. I don't think that we don't have a role there. And I think by having to make an application through a development permit means that your neighbors are asked ahead of time if they have concerns. They're sent a notice to say this is what's being proposed. And that gives, even for the bee situation, if you have somebody with a severe allergy, maybe you could say no in that case. I don't know. I guess I'm on the fence now, because I think that's not a bad option to push it forward, but I don't know. I don't know.
It isn't discretionary use, right?
Yeah.
So discretionary use is
For hens,
applied
but not bees. Right?
Bees were permitted.
So I wonder if bees should be discretionary and that there be a term on the...
Excuse me, to administration, if I want to have a beehive, doesn't matter where, I have to apply to the Alberta government, do I not?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. You need to register for a PID number with the provincial government.
Okay, so there's already a level of governance there. Thank you.
I'm going to, because I feel really strongly about this, and because I recognize, and I agree with Councillor LaPrice, I see us as having a role in sort of balancing competing principles. So my preference is to regulate minimally. However, I do see, as Councillor LaPrice referenced, we do have a responsibility for governance for Wheatland County, which includes mitigating potential impacts on adjacent landowners. And that pervades most decisions we make, where we're balancing those two things, promoting development and mitigating impacts. So I'm looking at this sort of through that lens, and how do we strike that balance I would ask if Councillor Bigger might consider an amendment. With the Bs, I see some rationale for leaving that as permitted, recognizing that if we get an influx of concerns or there are issues with anaphylaxis or anaphylactic reactions, that can be brought forward to council. I know administration would bring that to our attention if that was being brought to administration. And I know every councillor in this room would bring it to council if it's being brought to us as individuals. Given that we would have discretion around the fee because we would need to amend the master fee schedule, I would ask Councillor Bigger if she might, and I guess I would ask, before I propose an amendment, I'll ask administration, would the length of term for the development permit, would we need to speak to that in the land use bylaw, or could that be at MPC's discretion when the development permit comes to MPC? I believe we just did it recently with another one where we did a time limit.
Through the chair, you as MPC obviously have the ability to vary the conditions as you see fit, so you could do that. The concern obviously is if you're thinking 5, 10 years down the line, some of you may decide to pursue other things, and then you might not be there. So the idea of having it in the land use bylaw makes sure that it is consistent beyond kind of electoral terms and that type of thing.
So for me, part of my rationale, I'm actually not going to propose an amendment because all 7 of us are sitting for another 3.5 years. Because our MPC is also made up of all 7 of us, MPC would have the discretion to perhaps for the next year at MPC's discretion, knowing that that's a separate governing body, would have the discretion to approve a term limit on development permits that are brought forward, and we could do a few tests to see are we getting complaints? Are there any issues emerging from this? We could direct administration to bring those concerns forward to council if concerns, or to MPC if concerns are raised. To Councillor Eichert's concerns, I agree with you. I would prefer to see the fee on the lower end. But then building on what Councillor Bigger said, having a small fee, a nominal fee that is affordable for folks, I think does demonstrate commitment to doing this. And so I'm not going to propose an amendment. I still support the motion, or the proposed amendment to the motion. I think it does strike that balance between regulating minimally and still mitigating those impacts on adjacent landowners. Any other questions or discussion? I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion fails.
So now we've lost the whole thing, right?
That's correct.
Well, you can bring another motion forward.
So just under, just for council's information, under section 188 of the MGA, the previous readings of a proposed bylaw are rescinded if the proposed bylaw under section 188B is defeated on second or third reading. Right. So that means it's the first reading's rescinded. So that in my terms, anyways, that would mean that the first bylaw is rescinded. Therefore, if council does choose to rescind or re-examine this, it would have to happen in 1 year.
So we're done with it.
Yes, we are done with it. Yes.
We can't amend it and approve the other stuff. We're done with it.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
Okay.
Okay. Moving along and having a good time.
Just a question to administration. If you were contemplating a different first reading, though, we could hold 3 readings. Or would you, because it's a land use bylaw, would you need a new public hearing if you've already held a public hearing on those issues?
Administration will answer this question after we take a look into it a little bit, and we'll get back to council.
Why don't we take a break for 5? It's around the time we usually do anyways. We will reconvene at 10:30.
You have been muted. To unmute yourself, press the star key twice. Mute off.
Well, that's right. Keep placing the amended agenda someplace.
I'll call the meeting back to order, and I'm going to move us into closed session. All in favor? All in favor? Opposed? Rick, are you voting?
I
Going into
just want
closed
to know
session?
why we're going into closed session.
Broadband,
But that's-
10:30 appointment.
Oh, because we have an appointment. Oh, okay. 'Cause I couldn't
closed
find it on
session
the agenda.
appointment, yes.
Okay, good enough. Now I'll vote in favor.
Awesome.
Gotcha.
Motion is carried. We're in closed session.